How did the scent of an extinct flower, once native to a long-gone island at the Falls of the Ohio, find its way to the nostrils of curious museum goers in the 2020s? That's the fascinating story we're diving into today.
Hello and welcome to Kentucky Wide, a podcast production of the Fraser Kentucky History Museum. I'm Mick Sullivan.
And I'm Sarah Jemerson. We are your co-hosts today as we learn about Dr. Charles Wilkins Short and the Falls-of-the-Ohio Scurfpea.
In addition to the story from the past, we're going to bring it to present day with Dr. Christina Agapakis, one of the lead scientists behind the project to resurrect the scent of the unique Kentucky flower preserved way back in the 1850s. Parts of this episode, including the interview, appeared in another podcast I host and produced called The Past and the Curious. That episode was released earlier this year, after I was fortunate enough to spend some time with Dr. Agapakis in Boston.
You've probably smelled a lot of smells in your life. In the same way, you've probably tasted a lot of tastes. I'm sure you even have some favorites. I bet you've also heard a lot of sounds as well. But here's an interesting thought. There are sounds, smells, and tastes that no one alive today has ever and will ever hear, smell, or taste. Why? Because they're gone. And they've been gone longer than any living human has walked this earth. So we've never had the opportunity to experience them. Losing species of plants and animals is unfortunately not uncommon. Knowing this is possible, many scientists have taken great pains to document and preserve specimens so we can keep as much knowledge as possible. Knowledge, of course, is a good thing, and so is protecting it. People have been doing this for a long time. One guy in the 1800s got so obsessed with plants that he created the largest collection of preserved specimens in America at the time. And he just so happened to do it in Kentucky. But his story doesn't end in the Commonwealth. It goes much farther, as you'll soon learn.
Charles Wilkins Short was a doctor. He was born in 1794 in Woodford County, but he practiced for many years in Christian County, near Hopkinsville, Kentucky. Dr. Short made house calls, took care of sick patients, delivered babies, the works. He was well qualified, to say the least. After studying at the so-called Harvard of the South, Transylvania University in Lexington, he headed to Philadelphia and studied with Dr. Caspar Wistar. As one of the nation's most accomplished scientific minds, Dr. Wistar was president of the American Philosophical Society, and famously the same man who trained and prepared Meriwether Lewis for many of the scientific aspects of the Lewis and Clark expedition. Dr. Wistar is remembered in many ways, but one is nature. If you've ever seen the flowing purple flowers that look like a frozen lavender waterfall, that's called wisteria, named after Dr. Caspar Wistar. His protege, Charles Short, would eventually get a flower named after himself too, Short's goldenrod. Wisteria is very common these days, but unfortunately Short's goldenrod is endangered and currently only found in a few sites around Kentucky and Indiana. Maybe it's fitting, though, Dr. Short was no stranger to endangered plants. After tiring of daily work as a doctor, he took a job teaching at his alma mater, Transylvania University. Dr. Short was a man with varied interests beyond medicine, and he grew fascinated with plants.
Botany, the study of plants, became his new focus. Later he moved to Louisville, helped found a medical school there, and not long after, his big moment came. Like out of a movie, a wealthy uncle passed away, leaving his estate to Dr. Short. With the change in finances, Dr. Short retired and threw himself into the plant world. Leaves and stems, flowers and fruit, roots and tubers, Dr. Short was in the weeds. He grew an incredible garden, and often he and his daughter would roam the countryside or riverbanks, looking for unfamiliar plants. His work was invaluable. He collected almost 15,000 specimens of plants of all kinds. They were neatly dried, pressed, preserved, and documented. He recorded where and when each of the specimens was harvested, and he knew many of them were very unique. He also hoped they would be useful to people. The world has changed a lot since then. Plants and animals have changed, relocated, or disappeared entirely, largely thanks to humans. Dr. Short lived in a world different than our own. He saw, and smelled, plants that we will never see, including one called the Falls-of-the-Ohio Scurfpea.
Not long before his death in 1863, Dr. Short ventured out to an island in the Ohio River known as Rock Island and made a few clippings of this scurfpea, a flowering legume. Rock Island once sat in the tumbling waters of the Falls of the Ohio, which was the only natural obstacle on the entire river of 981 miles. Depending on the time of the year, Dr. Short might have rowed a boat to the island to get some of the scurfpea plants, or if the water was low, as it often was during the late summer, he might have just waded out to the green island in the middle of the river. He wouldn't have been the first. Before the area was settled, the land was dominated by animals. And for centuries, millions of bison made a crossing at this same spot. When the plants were green, they would wade to Rock Island, munch on scurfpea, and then continue across the river to the other bank to head west. So many of them used this route that their heavy, constant feet wore paths through Kentucky and Indiana. Today, some of those paths have now become roadways we people have adapted, paved, and used on our own journeys. And for those path-forging bison, the scurfpea was one of their favorite food sources. But if they wanted it, they had one option: Rock Island. As far as anyone knows, Rock Island was the only place in the world that this scurfpea plant grew. After Dr. Short made his clipping, passed away, and was buried in Cave Hill Cemetery, Rock Island disappeared. It's no mystery, the entire island didn't just vanish, it was flooded. It's underwater. You see, in order to make the river easier to navigate for boat traffic, people had to change the river. A new dam and canal were big parts of this, as was a lock system eventually. This allowed people to use the entire river with ease, and it changed things profoundly for humans. But of course, these changes also affected plants, like the scurfpea. And since it only grew on Rock Island, and Rock Island was now underwater, this was the end for the old Falls of the Ohio Scurfpea. No one has seen or smelled the scurfpea flower since 1881.
When Dr. Charles Wilkins Short died in 1863, his collection of 15,000 preserved plant specimens became a big question mark. That's a lot of preserved plants. It was probably the finest collection in America at the time. But to appreciate it, you've really got to be into that sort of thing. And Dr. Short was the most into it at the time. In his will, he wished to give the lot to the Smithsonian. But even America's National Museum was a little worried. 15,000 is a lot, and really, they didn't have the facilities at the time to house the plant samples. So instead, most of his collection ended up in the Philadelphia Academy of Natural Sciences. In addition, more than a few of his pieces made their way to the herbarium collection at Harvard University, not far from Boston. This is part of a collection documenting natural history that is now a huge, important resource for scientific knowledge. In the Harvard Herbarium is where a scurfpea specimen sat in a cabinet surrounded by millions of other plant samples. Undiscovered, relatively unimportant, and since it went extinct 20 years after Dr. Short's death, it went unsmelled. Over 150 years later, some people had an idea. One of those people was Dr. Christina Agapakis.
I'm Christina Agapakis. I'm a biologist and an artist, but like the art is almost like it's in service of this kind of like storytelling. So like I'm a scientist and a storyteller, and I work with doing projects that help people fall in love with living things.
Christina was working for a Boston-based company called Ginkgo Bioworks, who do many things, including using biology and biotechnology to help companies create scents for their products.
talking with folks in the fragrance industry and kind of like riffing and almost joking around a little bit and saying like, I wonder if you could make like Jurassic Park for a perfume. Like, could you find the DNA from a flower that had gone extinct, and then use biology to use its DNA, and actually produce those smells? And so that kicked off a very long project over many years to find DNA from extinct flowers, and try to reproduce their smells.
So the first step, of course, was to find a suitable extinct flower from which they could gather DNA.
Well, so we started for a long time trying to think like, maybe like there's going to be some specimens in like permafrost. Like I sent a lot of messages to scientists who study permafrost in like Siberia and in like sort of like northern Nordic countries. And then I sent a bunch of emails to like the Army Corps of Engineers runs a big tunnel in Alaska. And I was like, maybe we could go and sample flowers. And then we're like lost in the permafrost there. Those are all dead ends.
So that idea was out in the cold. She turned next to Wikipedia to get a sense of the plants that had gone extinct relatively recently. Then she and others went to spend some time searching through the millions of specimens at the Harvard Herbarium.
We went to the herbarium. We printed out a list of every single plant that had gone extinct in the past 200 years and like manually went through the stacks looking to see if we could find those specimens.
In many ways, where they were going to land was entirely up to chance. There were lots of specimens, lots of samples. You had to find one that was suitable and intact.
They're amazing. Like, so they're cataloged by families first, I think. So family, genus, species, right? And then in these huge shelves, wall of these paper folders. And then you sort of scan through the paper folders, and then it's like by geographic region, I think, sort of within there. And then you can find the species name is written in pencil, in cursive on most of them. And you pull them out, and then like you're not allowed to put them back. It's like really like a library, like, because if you put them in the wrong place, they'll be gone forever. Like you'll never be able to find them again.
And then there was another detail. Harvard was not going to let them destroy a specimen.
If you take a sample and you try to get the DNA from it, that bit is destroyed, and that plant, obviously is like very precious specimen. So often they let us take only ones that had like little bits already broken off, and they were sort of let us take those little pieces, and not sort of harm the overall integrity of the specimen.
Through it all, one old dead flower emerges. You guessed it, Dr. Short's sample of the Falls-of-the-Ohio Scurfpea. This plant, once a beloved snack for river-crossing bison making a pit stop on Rock Island, was going to be smelled for the first time since 1881. But first, getting DNA from an old sample is very difficult.
We ran into some trouble getting good quality DNA specimens, like from the samples at first. And again, like very precious, like if you destroy them trying to get the DNA out to sequence it. And if you mess up, or like you have trouble doing it, like you run out of specimens. So after a couple tries, we reached out to Paleogenomics Lab at UC Santa Cruz, run by Beth Shapiro, and Beth and her team were really gracious collaborators, and we sent them the samples, and they were able to use their techniques, sort of specialized for ancient DNA and plants, to be able to get the DNA out, and so we could get the sequences that we needed to be able to do the next step.
That next step involved putting DNA into yeast. The fermentation process makes alcohol, but it also creates scent molecules that the DNA informs. These scent molecules were too small to smell, but luckily, science and teamwork was there to help. They were able to identify just what scent molecules this DNA created.
So we worked with a smell artist named Sissel Tolas, who is a really brilliant olfactory artist and researcher. And so we gave her the list of the molecules that we were able to identify from the yeast that had the DNA in them. And she put together these really interesting compositions of the smells. And so her artistry was really important. And then we worked with Daisy Ginsburg, who is an artist and a designer who worked a lot at that time with biotechnology, like as a kind of conceptual medium and storytelling.
In 2019, an installation went up at the Cooper Hewitt Museum in New York City, which was, once upon a time, Andrew Carnegie's house. Visitors would step inside a structure, see an artistic representation and images of the historic site, and then the scent would waft down from above, 150 years from the past, a smell that had not been smelled until that moment. I'm sure Dr. Short could have never dreamt of this possibility, much less guessed that his clipping would win the Jurassic Park lottery. He wouldn't even understand the Jurassic Park reference for that matter. But we don't know if he realized when he was alive that the plant from his clipping was so unique to Rock Island between the Portland neighborhood of Louisville and New Albany, Indiana. But the ensuing years of scientific research have made it clear. When the island disappeared, so did the plant. Actually, we've been told recently that searching for the Falls-of-the-Ohio Scurfpea is sort of a rite of passage for many naturalists in the area. So who knows, maybe we've missed it or we'll see a reappearance. But in the meantime, the long-lost plant from Kentucky, saved by Dr. Short, has led to a tremendous amount of creativity, curiosity, and imagination, which is a marvelous thing. I like to believe that if Dr. Short could somehow make sense of all of this in his 19th century mind, he would find it extremely exciting. Part of a clipping he took before the Civil War was being smelled over a century later in museums by people from all walks of life, all of whom were eager to get a whiff of the past, a whiff of what's gone, but also a whiff of what's possible. But there is one more question most people have, and that is, was the smell perfect?
I think, first of all, the biology of smell is really interesting and complicated. Like a plant or flower has zillions of different things that are contributing to the smell that it has. Those they change over the course of a day or the course of a season. There's no single smell. And what we were able to kind of capture from the DNA was a very small fraction of the kinds of biology that are going to be able to make all of those smells. So it was already kind of like a really small snapshot of the molecules that are part of a smell. And we were no way to be able to tell how much of those molecules relative to each other. All of that were creative decisions that Sissel had to make based on the science of what we could find in the research. So that the art of perfumery and sort of creating these smells is a lot of sort of layers of interpretation in addition to kind of the scientific questions that are still open.
The installation did make a few international stops, but when we reached out to Daisy Ginsburg, the artist behind that arm of the project, we learned that it had been officially retired. However, a perfume company called Future Society has made a wearable version of the scent. It's called Grassland Opera. And yes, it is available at the Fraser Museum and online at coolkentuckyshop.com. It's really, really nice, and when we bring it to in-person engagements, people love it. So if you would like to marry your passion for history, science, nature, and fine fragrances, look no further. As for science and the possibilities of bioengineering, I think Dr. Agapakis has a tremendous outlook. You see, we are history people, so obviously we value the power of stories and humans and key moments large and small. But it's so refreshing to consider how science can play a huge role in that as well, and give us both a new way to look at the past, but also a new way to tell stories.
I wanted biology to be something that you could fall in love with. Then that sort of fluffiness of perfumes, it's intangible. It doesn't feel serious, compared to something I'm going to make, whatever, I'm going to cure cancer. I'm going to do these other things. It might seem sort of silly. But I think that kind of that human and emotional connection to everyday things also really matters and is an important part of science and technology and what we do in the world. So I still work with biotechnology, and I still want to tell fun, beautiful stories.
If you want to get a little closer to Dr. Short, he left his mark on campus at Transylvania University in Lexington. as well as in the Hayfield neighborhood of Louisville. Near Atherton High School, the neighborhood is named after his estate, Hayfield, which still stands. Also, he is buried, like many other fascinating people, at Cave Hill Cemetery. Thanks for joining us for Kentucky Wide. Mick Sullivan wrote both the story and music for this episode, and portions of the story appeared in Kentucky Living magazine earlier this year, as well as on the Past and the Curious podcast. Be sure to subscribe and share Kentucky Wide. We'll be back in a few weeks with more curious and noteworthy tales of Kentucky.
Kentucky Wide comes to you from the Fraser Kentucky History Museum, where our newest exhibit, I Too Am a Kentuckian, is now open. The beautiful exhibit opened on July 4th, 2026, and will be open for a full year, so come see it while you can. We always keep a full calendar of public programs, educational events, out-of-school time camps for kids, and much more, so stay in contact. And as always, we hope to see you here at our museum in beautiful, sunny, downtown Louisville, Kentucky.